Are you planning on buying a Canon C70? And if you've already bought a Canon C70, then I have a question for you. Do you have buyer's remorse? This video is brought to you by Soundstripe. Soundstripe offers royalty-free music, sound effects, and video assets for all of your creative projects. Be sure to check them out. I'll link them in the description. Do you have buyer's remorse? And yes, that was a serious question. And if it sounded like I'm trying to stir up emotion, well, you're not wrong. So let me tell you my story. I personally sold myself on the idea that the Canon C70 was every bit as good as the Canon C300 Mark III, and also that the 120 frames per second slow motion on the C70 was equal or better than the 1DX Mark II, because this was doing it in 4K, not 1080. So is that true? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on the type of content that you're shooting. It depends on the features that you need out of the Canon C70. For example, if your idea of off-speed shooting or slow motion is 60 frames per second, you will likely have a very different feeling than the individual who expected the Canon C70 to perform at 4K 120 frames per second, superior or equal to the quality that we get out of the 1DX Mark II. And you see, that is exactly what I did to myself. I expected the Canon C70 to completely replace my 1DX Mark II and to perform at the exact same level or even better maybe than the C300 Mark III. You see, in my head, that meant I didn't have to buy another C500 Mark II or a C300 Mark III. And if I sold my 1DX Mark II, then I could use some of that cash to offset my swap or exchange for cameras. And that whole cloudy mess is exactly what got me to today's video. So enough talk, let's take a look at some examples. And I want you to please understand that while I am guaranteed to hurt some people's feelings with this video, my intent is that someone else might benefit and learn from my own filmmaking path and my own choices. Roll the examples. So these example shots are from a corporate documentary project that we've been working on for the past 8 months. So this required all hands on deck. We had 20 build locations scattered across the upper Midwest, where traveling from one spot to the other really meant we needed all the crews to be working at the exact same time. And by now I'm guessing you can see my problem, right? The Canon C70 seemed like the ideal documentary camera simply because of what all of the specs tell us and the form factor itself. Not to mention the amount of coverage that the Canon C70 received on YouTube from a lot of really popular channels. And I want to make something clear. While my channel is not one of those hyper popular channels, I was also one of those people that gave the C70 a lot of coverage. In our regular test, this camera checked off so many things that I totally knew I didn't need the 1DX Mark II anymore. And it was going to save me tons of cash, so I didn't have to spend the extra money on the bigger brother cinema cameras. And I sold myself on that thought more than any of you will ever know. There were many conversations with my crew where I was the advocate, the guy selling everyone on how this was the right direction and the right thing for our company and our crews. And the truth is, I was only focused on how much money I was going to save. But was I really saving money though? Oh wait, maybe you guys can't see the problem yet. Let me show you. So here are some graded clips, and you can very clearly see that this camera is just about perfect from an image quality and production workflow perspective, with just one little tiny catch. The DGO sensor has to be engaged. That, by the way, is also the camera's single biggest weakness. When the DGO sensor is off or not engaged, we end up with a massively noisy image. And it doesn't matter if you just auto black balanced right before you started shooting in that environment. And that's also true even if you're shooting in full sun. And the other problem associated to the same thing, DGO sensor not being engaged, you lose a lot of dynamic range. And in short, just to super simplify this, even though the 1DX Mark II shooting at 120 frames per second is only 1080, that produces a higher quality image than what the C70 can produce in full sun at 120 frames per second at 4K. And that is actually where having a full frame sensor makes a huge difference. And to be fair, we can say that that is simply my opinion. And this is where I would like to invite all of you who are watching these videos that if you have shot clips at 120 frames per second in full sunlight in a high dynamic range situation, similar to what I did, and you had different results, please post a comment, post the link to that so we can all learn from each other and level up together. Needless to say, going through that journey and that experience, it was eye-opening and in some ways mind-blowing, but it needed to happen. And it is really important to me that you all know that I am not blaming the Canon C70. I am not blaming the Canon marketing. I am not blaming any YouTube channel that covered the Canon C70. I am rather putting myself in check and asking myself to make sure that I always test and test thoroughly every feature before I make a commitment and dive headfirst towards a new system. And I'm also asking myself to remember what it is that I'm actually shooting. What are the types of projects that are really profitable for the company? What are the things and types of projects that we want to continue to pursue? And which contracts are already inked and in the books? And use all of that information to make gear decisions that make sense and meet our business goals. In other words, yes, I'm a tech head. I get excited about new gear. I love cameras. I love technology in general. But I have to remember to always be respectful and responsible with the content that I share, good, bad, or indifferent, on all of my social channels so that you all can make the best decision for yourselves. So yes, I gave the Canon C70 a lot of praises over many videos. This happens to be a weakness that I discovered way after I made all of those other videos that I wanted to make sure I shared it with all of you. And you should keep one thing in mind. Unless we're all shooting the exact same project with the exact same script, with the exact same lighting setup, with the exact same shot list, with the exact same director, talent, and everything else, it is likely that if someone gave us a project and said, here's the script, each of us will produce something completely different. And you see, that is the best part about working in the creative field. So I'll catch up with you guys in the comments. Take care.
Put you on